Picture her on a stage in Sydney in 1983. She's 23 years old. She's wearing a schoolgirl dress, white collar, dark tie, short skirt, and she is moving across that stage like something between a sermon and a threat. The lights are hot. The crowd doesn't know quite what to do with what they're seeing, and then they do, and the room changes. Her voice comes out raw and precise and absolutely certain of itself. Not performing confidence, actually having it, in a way that women on rock stages in 1983 were not supposed to have it. She was doing then what would make people famous a decade later. She was doing it first, harder, and better. She was Chrissy Amphlett of the Divinyls, and she was one of the most powerful frontwomen in rock history. And most of the world never knew her name. She died on April 21, 2013 in New York City. She was 53 years old. She had been living with multiple sclerosis for more than a decade. She had also been living with breast cancer. She died of both, essentially, one degrading her nervous system, one taking her lungs, neither giving an inch. The world that had never quite claimed her barely noted her passing. I'm Marlo, and this is She Burned Bright. Tonight we're talking about a woman who deserved more than the world gave her, and what it means that we're still figuring that out. Chrissy Amphlett was born on October 25, 1959, in Geelong, Victoria, a working-class city south of Melbourne that was not, in the late 1950s and early 1960s, a place that produced rock and roll legends. She was one of 7 children. She was drawn to performing from the beginning, not as a hobby, not as a dream she tucked away for later, but as the only thing that made immediate and total sense to her. She left Australia as a teenager. That's worth sitting with for a moment. She was 16, 17 years old, and she got on a plane and went to Europe, alone, with next to nothing. She spent time in England, France, Spain. She lived rough. She worked what work she could find. She absorbed everything around her, the music, the theater, the attitude that European rock and punk carried in the mid-1970s. She was developing something, a performance vocabulary, an understanding that the stage was a place where you could be entirely what you were, and if people couldn't handle it, that was their problem. She came back to Australia in the late 1970s, and in 1980 she met guitarist Mark McEntee in Sydney. They formed the Divinyls. The chemistry between them, on stage and off, was immediate and combustible. McEntee could write, Amphlett could deliver. What they built together was one of the genuinely original acts in Australian rock. Fierce, sexually charged, emotionally direct, sonically punishing in all the right ways. The Australian rock scene in the early 1980s was serious. This was the era of Midnight Oil, Cold Chisel, In Excess. Male-dominated largely, powerful bands built around powerful male frontmen. Into this world came Chrissy Amphlett in her schoolgirl dress, singing about desire and danger without asking anyone's permission. The dress. Let's talk about the dress. It was a deliberate choice, a school uniform, subverted. She was 30 years old in some of her most iconic performances wearing it. The point was the tension, innocence and experience, girlhood and sexuality, the thing that society told women to be, and the thing Amphlett actually was. It was theater, and it was also a provocation, and it worked because she was completely committed to it. There was nothing self-conscious about it. She wore it the way a weapon is held, with purpose. Her voice was the other thing. It could do things most rock vocalists couldn't touch. She could be tender and snarling in the same phrase. She could take a lyric that looked ordinary on the page and make it sound like she just discovered it, raw-edged, for the first time. She had range and she had grit, and she had something rarer than either of those things. She had emotional directness. You believed every word she sang, because she was incapable of singing it any other way. The Divinyls released Desperate in 1983, then What a Life in 1985, then Temperamental in 1988. In Australia, they were critically respected and commercially successful. They toured internationally, the US, Europe, and something strange happened, or rather failed to happen. The international recognition didn't come, not at the level it should have. The albums didn't translate into sustained presence outside Australia. The tours were noticed but not remembered. The world was doing what it often does with women who are too much, registering them, being moved by them, and then moving on without quite understanding what it had witnessed. Then came 1990. Then came I Touch Myself. The song was written by Amphlett with Mark McEntee and two of the members of Soup Dragons, Billy Steinberg and Tom Kelly, the same team that had written Like a Virgin for Madonna. But I Touch Myself was something different from anything that had come before it. It was a song about female desire, not metaphorical desire, not politely veiled desire, but literal, explicit, unapologetic female masturbation, sung by a woman, in first person, on radio. In 1990, that was not a small thing. It reached number 4 on the US Billboard Hot 100, number 1 in Australia, top 10 in multiple countries. It was her international breakthrough, the song that finally made the world pay attention. Radio stations in multiple markets banned it or refused to play it unedited, which of course made it more famous. MTV played the video, which showed Amphlett in full command of her physicality, fully herself, fully unrepentant. It was one of the most honest rock performances caught on film that decade, and here is where the story turns. Because I Touch Myself should have been the beginning of the second chapter. It should have been the platform that launched the sustained international career she had been building toward for 10 years. She was 30 years old. She had a decade of brilliant work behind her. She had a global hit. She had everything. It didn't happen. The follow-up albums didn't crack the international market the way they needed to. The music industry of the early 1990s was in upheaval. Grunge was arriving and reshaping everything. And somehow Amplett's work fell between the categories. Too established to be new, too Australian to be fully embraced, too sexual to be safe, not packaged correctly for the moment. There is no single explanation. There is only the result. The world that had briefly looked at her looked away again. She kept working. She kept recording. She kept performing. This is who she was. Someone who got back on the stage because that's what she did, regardless of what the industry had decided about her commercial viability. And then, in the early 2000s, her body delivered the first blow. Multiple sclerosis is a disease of the central nervous system. It attacks the myelin sheath, the protective coating around nerve fibers, and it does it gradually, over years, degrading the signals between the brain and the body. For a performer whose entire instrument was her body, her voice, her physicality, her presence, the diagnosis was a particular kind of cruelty. MS is unpredictable. Some days are manageable, some days are not. You don't know from morning to evening which kind of day you're having. She was diagnosed in the early 2000s. She did not stop performing. She did not announce it to the world and retire gracefully. She kept going. For years after the diagnosis, she was still on stages, still giving everything she had, because the alternative was to let the disease take the one thing that had always been entirely hers. Then came the second blow, breast cancer. Diagnosed in 2010, she was 50 years old. Think about that for a moment. 50 years old, dealing with a progressive neurological disease, and now a cancer diagnosis on top of it. The timing, just as the Divinyls were beginning to experience renewed interest in their back catalog, just as the anniversary of I Touch Myself was bringing a new generation of listeners to her work, her body was failing her from two directions at once. She continued to perform where she could. In 2011, the Divinyls announced they would tour to celebrate the 20th anniversary of I Touch Myself. By then, Amplett's health was deteriorating seriously. The tour was scaled back. She was using a wheelchair at times. She was losing the physical battle even as she was winning every other kind. She died on April 21, 2013 in New York City. She was 53 years old. The official cause was complications from breast cancer and multiple sclerosis. In Australia, there was genuine mourning. In the rest of the world, not very much. A few obituaries, a few tributes from musicians who knew their debt to her. And then the news cycle moved on, as it does. What happened next was both justice and its own kind of sorrow. The Breast Cancer Network Australia, in the months after her death, launched a campaign using "I Touch Myself" as its anthem, urging women to touch themselves, to know their bodies, to check for lumps, to fight for their own survival. The campaign was called "I Touch Myself Project." It was widely shared. It was genuinely moving. Celebrities and musicians recorded their own versions. The song finally became the anthem it always deserved to be, not just a statement of female sexual autonomy, but a battle cry for female bodily survival. The song found the size it was always meant to have. Chrissy Amphlett didn't live to see it. Here is what I want to say about the specific injustice of her story. She was more important than she was credited for. The women who became famous in the 1990s for their raw sexuality, their refusal to be palatable, their physically committed performances. Many of them were doing things that Chrissy Amphlett had already done years earlier, better. She predated the moment. She was ahead of the category the world was building around performers like her. And because she was ahead of it, she wasn't counted in it. She died at 53, which is too young. She died of 2 diseases simultaneously, which is unfair by any accounting. She died in a country that wasn't hers, New York, far from Geelong, far from the Sydney stages where she first figured out who she was. She died without the Grammy nominations, without the Rolling Stone covers, without the sustained international attention that the quality of her work demanded. The ARIA Hall of Fame inducted the Divinyls. The breast cancer campaign gave her song its proper weight. Courtney Love and Joan Jett said publicly what they owed her. These things are true and they matter, but they came after, and the after doesn't replace the during. What she deserved was to be recognized while she was alive, on stages she could still stand on, by audiences who could still tell her directly that what she made changed them. We owe her the acknowledgement we didn't give in time. We owe her the listening we're doing now, years late. And we owe her the honesty to say, she was one of the greatest front women in rock history, and the world failed to notice, and that failure belongs to us. If this story deserved to be told, and it did, share it with someone who's never heard her name. Let that be the first step toward correcting what got left undone. I'm Marlo. I'll be here next week with another story from the women who burned so bright the world should have looked longer.